Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Emily, and this week we're doing my homework, just a little bit. I'm in my second year of music performance, and like all college students, I guess, we take history classes. But our history classes are, you guessed it, the history of music. This semester I'm actually in a jazz history class, so it's called Jazz and Latin Music Styles, but it's history of music. And we kind of start at the beginning in the 1930s and power through and learn it all. Everything, how it happened, who was influential to where it's gotten to today, and everything in between. Absolutely everything. Like, we talk about so much. But that's the class right now. So for my midterm project, I had the option of doing a artist biography kind of vibe or an album review. And in the beginning, I was like, album review, absolutely. I had listened to You Leave Me Breathless by Nancy Wilson, and I thought that was amazing. I don't even like jazz. It's not my go-to, it's not my forte, it's not what I love. But I loved this, and I don't know why. I loved it. And that was gonna be my project. It would be an album review on Nancy Wilson's first album done in 1960 called Like and Love. That was what it was gonna be. And I started watching interviews so I could kind of see if I could find stories about recording or if I could find any information like that at all. And all I found was interviews of her and how amazing she is. And I got her story and I learned how she progressed into what she is and where she came from and how she did it. And every time she put her foot down and said, no, this is what I'm doing, you can't tell me like that I'm doing it this way. Or every time that she just did what she wanted to. She was a wonderful example of a female in the music industry who wasn't pushed around. Everything she said, I ate it right up. Her interviews were so poised, she was so aware, she knew what she did and she knew how great she was. And the more I prepared for my album review, the more I realized that I was just gonna do my project on Nancy Wilson. I just wanted more. I wanted to know more about her. I want to understand her decision making more. So we're gonna talk. I'm gonna tell you about Nancy Wilson. So to start, she was not your typical jazz artist. She dabbled in R&B and pop. She did what she wanted to and no one was gonna tell her different. She was in an interview, and this was the interview that made me decide that my project will be done on her. All the stuff will be linked below too, because you should definitely go watch those interviews if you are interested in anything I'm saying right now. Anyways, she was in an interview, and she's explaining how the jazz artists don't accept her and say she's a pop artist. And then the pop artists don't accept her and they say she's a jazz artist. And it was back and forth like this. So the interviewer pipes up and says, well, what's even a jazz artist? Does it mean you scat? And she comes back and says, well, if that's what it means, I'm not. Because I don't scat, I'm not a scatter. She's in an industry where Ella Fitzgerald is the icon of jazz, and Ella scats. Ella scats good. And she's like, that's just not what I do. She's like, you have it all wrong. She's like, I've never professed to be a jazz artist. When people would tell her that she's not a jazz artist, she's like, well, I didn't say I was. She did an album in 1962 with Cannonball Adderley. And the critics told her that it was a compromise for Cannon's catalog because she's a pop artist. She was caught in the middle. And I think that that's what a lot of artists do, is they take inspiration from where they had inspiration. Because see, she didn't even listen to the female jazz singers until she was 15. Her dad had bought all these male R&B and blues singers on vinyl, and that's what she listened to. So that was her upbringing, was R&B. In 1964, she won a Grammy for R&B. And then later in 2005 and 2008, she won Grammys for jazz, because she's a jazz artist. Everyone's putting her in boxes, with the Grammys saying you're an R&B artist this year and you're a jazz artist this year. They're putting her in boxes. The critics are saying, no, you're a jazz artist. No, you're a pop artist. And they're trying to tell her what she is, and she just sits back like, okay. She's like, all right. She literally did not care. She was a vocalist. She sang what she wanted to sing. She was very specific about what she would sing. There's a quote in that interview that I think resonates in this topic a lot for her. And she said, "I've never apologized for being a commercial artist. This is why I do what I do. I want to be heard. I want to reach as many people as I can." She doesn't care. She just wants to sing, like really. And so everyone's putting her in these boxes and they're trying to define her as something when she has really just taken inspiration from everything that's been around her, from growing up under an R&B setting and then going into like pop and then grabbing all the jazz, because she sings all the jazz standards. She sings all like with the jazz bands and the big bands and the trios, and she's a jazz artist. But she has so much influence and so many people trying to tell her what she is. The way she handled it was really interesting and really like kind of just like, can I say badass? So going off that and her whole attitude approaching how the industry viewed her kind of just also follows on her take into the industry and the confidence and the poise that she had. The entire time watching her in an interview, I'm just thinking she's so well spoken. She's not rambling, she's not like, she's very composed. Maybe she's just been trained very well for interviews. Right from the get-go, she had a TV show at 15, so she was kind of like in the industry, but not really. And she sang at every single event that happened in her small town in Ohio. She was the singer. No matter who was like on tour or like who was around, like if there was an event going on in her town, she was singing. Actually, on her prom night, she sat in on Rusty Bryant's band who was in town that night, and she sat in and sang. Next day, he went to her father and said, "Please let her go on tour. She needs to be heard," basically. And Nancy said no. At 15, she said no to the music industry. And there was a quote saying that she knew it would hurt her. She knew the difference between music and show business. And she knew that show business would hurt her, and that it was mean and it was cruel and it wasn't forgiving. And at 15, 16, 17, 18, she was not prepared to handle that, and she knew it. So there's multiple people who wanted to sign her and take her, and they all knew who she was and what she was doing. She was known. But she was a kid, and she wanted to go to school and study, and that's what she did. It's because she had confidence in herself, and she knew that she would always be a big deal back home, and she would always have the gigs back home and always be performing, that she wasn't worried about the security of a job. She wanted to do something because she loved it, and she was scared that if she went to the industry at that young age that she wouldn't love it anymore. She just wanted the music and the just singing at that time. She didn't care for like the politics of it all. And that's what she did. She went to school, she just kept singing on her free time, and she'd perform every weekend at the places and everything. At 23, she gave herself 6 months to make it in the industry. It was October 1959. And she moves to New York City, and she gets jobs. She had a couple like just random like retail jobs here and there, and then she finally settled on a job at the New York Technology Institute, and she was like a secretary, kind of administrator there. And they were very forgiving with her hours, that she could still do all of her music stuff on the side. So they just like kept a job for her as she needed it throughout the beginning of her like discovery. She knew when she got there that she was only going to do it in the business if she had Capitol Records, John Levy as her manager, and David Kavanaugh as her producer. And within 3 months of being in New York City, so she got there October, November, by December, they were in California recording her first album under Capitol Records with John Levy as her manager and David Kavanaugh producing it. And like, is that not like who is this girl? She's some kid from Ohio who knew she could make it. She knew she was gonna make it, and she wasn't scared to try to make it internationally. She waited until she was ready. And she knew her whole life that she would have something in the industry, because she would just go back to it. And she would play in her small venues in Ohio that she was doing. But this was her chance. Those 6 months that she gave herself was her chance to make it nationally, and she did. And she knew what she wanted, and she she got it. So I just see Nancy Wilson as someone who's timeless and was such a role model with her decision making and everything. She's in the industry for 46 years, and right now on Spotify she has 81 albums. That's more than an album a year. That's crazy. I think maybe 8 to 10 of them might be like original demos, like re-released in the last little bit. It was very specific about the albums she would put out and the songs that were on the album. She was a very big lyricist. She wanted to tell a story with the songs, and no, she didn't write them, but she would say no to songs, and she would make sure that she liked the songwriting of it before she would just put it on an album. Like, she wanted to like it, and she wanted to almost internalize the material and feel like she could make it her own. I'm gonna leave you with, I think, my favorite story that she told. So her album had just been recorded. She had just been signed to Capitol Records. John Levy is her manager, and David Kavanaugh produced it. Everything she wanted. And right before the album was about to release to the world, and she was some girl from Ohio that nobody knew, her and John Levy flew to Australia and worked there for the remainder of the year and recorded and played gigs and worked straight. So when the album dropped, she wasn't there. And that was a big deal. People are hearing these songs and they want to hear these songs and they want them played live, and she's not in North America to do it. So they waited until they were begging for her to go back. And I think that just kind of shows that she knew John, like she knew what John was like. She knew what he was like a manager, and that was the decision that he made. And she was just glowing when she was telling this story of how he said, no, we're not going to be here. He's like, when that album drops, we're not going to be here. We're going to be like working over in Australia, not even think twice about it. And then we'll come back when they're begging for you, when they want you back. That's when we'll go back. It's really weird to learn all this information about her, and I'm falling in love with her story and her, like, just that confidence about her. And she's passed away, like, in 2018. Like, she's not around anymore. And it's crazy the impact that she's left, that I'm sitting here as somebody who doesn't like jazz, studying a jazz-based curriculum, finding her through that. And she's not even around anymore. Kind of surreal to think what she left behind. Like, she has 3 kids that are still alive, and she has 81 albums. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you learned something. I definitely did. And go listen to Nancy Wilson. Watch those interviews that I'll link below if you're interested in this at all, because it was very interesting to watch. Anyways, hope you have a good day.